Welcome everyone to this week's Stopping the Violence. Uh, Always just like to give you just a little synopsis of how did it start. It started with Mother Moon, who we affectionately call Mother Moon. It's Dr. Akshahan Moon, who really saw the need for stopping gun violence in America, dealing with guns. So we initially started off with that premise. And then afterwards, we realized that, well, yeah, a gun is an inanimate object. What does it take for a person to pick up that particular gun and harm his fellow citizen? Then that morphed into root causes, which led into us bringing some dynamic speakers from every walk of life that is dealing with violence in America, from police officers, police chiefs, judges, community activists, faith leaders, all sorts of people, teachers, just a variety of people we have had over the last 3 years that has led us into this whole concept of, okay, we have great speakers, but we realize that through them and from them, there were best practices because in their little silos or wherever they are in their particular cities or their communities, they are making or creating what I like to use sustainable results. But I always like another part to put on that sustainable. Sustainable results that you can measure, that is making a difference within the communities. And then how we can bring them all together on a national platform to have a national impact that is so readily needed. So it's been a beautiful and a wonderful journey. Uh, Last year we had a wonderful conference called Stopping the Violence Best Practices, and this year we'll have another one, and it will grow with more participants and more speakers. So look out for that date. I think we're looking at December. We had it in November, but we have to move it up a little bit. But it's going to be in December. So we look forward to all of your guys' participation and coming in. And if you have anyone that you'd like to invite, just let us know if you'd like to come. But we will send out that notice very soon. But today we have another wonderful speaker that we're excited to hear her hopes, her strengths, and how, I don't have Reverend up there, but I am a Reverend. My name is Reverend Zegri Oliver. And yeah, I'm in the area of as a faith leader, a person of faith. So, how is God working through these individuals, and how God is working through Donna Page Riley, who is going to be our speaker? Just a little bit. I just got a little synopsis of what she has gone through in her life, and I know she's dealt with bullying. If you see the topic, bullying, but I know that from bullying, she created a platform, what I would call character building and building true leadership in the communities that she serves and God has allowed her to touch. So without any further ado, I want to invite Donna Page Riley to our platform. Welcome to our platform. We look forward to hearing what you have to say and share with us.
Thank you so much, Reverend Oliver. I certainly do appreciate it, and I do not take this sharing lightly. So thank you so much. And as you said, yes, I have I dealt with a lot of bullying all throughout my school years. And I'm speaking of elementary school through high school. And it's just so amazing to me that children can be so cruel, right? And I would think to myself, where are they getting this from? But I went through quite a bit, and I think it probably weighed on me more heavily because I didn't tell anybody about it. I didn't even share it with my mom. And of course, I wouldn't suggest that anybody do that, but I just did not want her to have to worry about me because she had, so many other things on her plate with working and she was a single parent. So I never said anything to her about it. I just kind of endured and I would secretly cry and I would pray about it. I remember when I was 9 years of age, she had spoken to me and taught me about if I have any situations or any concerns or anything, I can always go and talk to Jesus about it. And so that's what I did. And again, I'm sure that had I said something to her, that would have helped me tremendously, but I did not. But again, bullying takes on several different forms. And anytime I'm going to speak about the topic, I always want to make sure that I just sort of share some current facts. I'm going to do that right now when it comes to children. There are 1 out of every 5 children reports being bullied. And this comes from the National Center for Education Statistics. In a multinational study across 83 countries, 30.5% of adolescents reported being bullied. And a higher portion of female than of male students report being bullied at school. And of course, we know these stats they're higher because they say that are being reported. And I'm sure they're not all reporting like I did not report. And I do want to share this one as well. A meta-analysis of responses from 14,083 students found that when youth are excluded from social activities by their peers at school, the outcomes for that student, both short-term and long-term, will be just as detrimental as if they got kicked, punched, or slapped every single day. And this comes from a survey of secondary youth on relational aggression, impact of bullying, social status, and attitudes. And when I just think of that, oftentimes people think bullying is just simply somebody beating a child up. And we would hear, of course, when we were younger on the playground. You may be on the playground and someone says, you better let me have it your turn or something like that. But as we know now, there are so many different levels of bullying, and bullying can take place so many different ways, and especially online. And I just want to talk about online for just a second because this situation is real personal to me. As a matter of fact, I had an opportunity to work with a group at this particular school in Atlanta, only to find that there was this young lady, she was in high school, and she was constantly being bullied every single day. So her mom just took her out of school and she allowed her to learn virtually. And so, we assumed that that would be fine. Well, I think it was about 2 months after this, her mom came home from school or from work like she did every day. And she called her daughter. She didn't get an answer. And she kept calling out for her. She didn't answer her. She knew she was home. And so, unfortunately, she went upstairs and she tried to open her door. And something was blocking the door. And she kept screaming for her daughter to open the door and let her in. Well, as she pushed herself in to her room, she found the absolute unthinkable. Her daughter had actually committed suicide. And that was just so unimaginable to her mother because although she knew her daughter was being bullied, she physically took her out of the school because you hear more commonly, the physical bullying. And it was just so very sad to hear her mom say that. She really thought that she had helped her daughter. She did not realize she was being bullied online um, via social media. And she went through her daughter's phone and her computer, and she just found all sorts of degrading, horrible comments that her peers had posted about her. And it was just horrible. So I just wanted to to share that story because it is so very real of what's going on with our children. And so as parents or grandparents, we have to make sure that we're checking in with our children to see how they're doing, to see if they are being bullied, and just asking those questions. Who are your friends? What are some of the things that they're talking about? Uh, who are the friends that are gossiping? What are they saying? Those kinds of things, and just kind of listening in on conversations. And it is just it's just awful. And I am so grateful that I was able to get through those years, even though I felt horrible about myself on days I didn't want to go to school because I knew I would be ridiculed as I would. And I thought talking to a friend would help me. And I remember we were at recess, and one of my so-called friends that I thought was a friend of mine that was in my science class when we were discussing bugs and things like that. I didn't like bugs. It wasn't I don't like bugs. I don't really care for them. Like she chased me with a spider. Those kinds of things. They're just terrible. And also with actually spreading rumors. And I don't know who started this. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never hurt me. I'm really not sure where that came from, but I so disagree with that statement because words can hurt, just like words can heal, words can hurt. And so I always want to remind people to encourage yourself. And of course, in scripture, it says, encourage yourself in the Lord, right? And I do want to say with words and affirming yourself in a positive manner. And words, again, words can hurt and they can heal. And when I say affirm yourself, I am special. I am unique. I have my own special gifts and talents. There is nothing else in the world, like no one else in the world like me. God created me just to be me. So you just want to, that is one of the affirmations actually that I wrote to help children especially. But just speaking, whatever you speak about yourself is true, whether it's negative or if it's positive, whatever you speak is true. That's why we want to make sure that our truth actually comes from what God says we are. And I would be remiss without talking about violence in the workplace. And of course, a lot of the violence in the workplace stems from toxic workplace behavior. And actually, when you're talking about toxic workplace behavior, even though we don't really hear it considered under the topic of bullying, but it actually is bullying. Okay. I also want to share a few um, stats. According to SHRM, which is, of course, is a society for human resource management. This was just really interesting when I researched these. Prevalence of toxic work environments. 67% of US employees report working in a toxic workplace environment. 67%, that's over half. 66% witnessed or experienced incivility at work in the past month. 60% of employees in toxic cultures are actively seeking new jobs. So sometimes we wonder about what's going on in some companies that have high turnovers, right? so many times it is that workplace environment. And then that leads me to mental health and emotional impact. 62% attribute their mental health to toxic workplace culture. And then it goes on to talk a little bit about burnout and productivity. And of course, we know that only 34% of workers feel their employer offers adequate burnout support. And 71% of Gen Z and 59% of millennials report workplace health scores. And so you might be thinking, well, toxic, what's an example maybe of a toxic workplace? I'll use myself as an example. I worked for an organization, it was a pretty large organization, had over 100 employees, and it was a husband and wife who actually owned, they were president and vice president of this organization. And the female, she had a very diabolical spirit, if you will. And so she would have a fight or something with her husband that night, and she would come in and she would actually fire individuals. No particular reason why, just upset. And of course, with Georgia being an at-work state, there was nothing that could be done about it. And so I actually worked at this organization. I worked in public relations with her. And so my office was right outside her door. But I knew that God had me on assignment there to minister to her and to encourage her. And I didn't realize there would be so many other employees that he had assigned to me that would come and speak to me to ask me, how is it that you deal with her? And I knew that it really wasn't her, it was a spirit, but I would try to encourage them on how to do that because I would hear her in meetings and she would be screaming to the top of her lungs in these meetings at employees. And it was just, I just couldn't believe it. But what I would do, I would try to encourage her. For the other employees, I just basically would try to encourage them. And I would even share scriptures with them as well. But toxic workplaces do exist. And it's so important. I teach a workshop that's called Grace, Etiquette, and Success. And it's how to identify if you work in a toxic workplace environment and what you need to do to be able to deal with that, right? Because there are some people who they've been working with organizations for years, very unhappy. On Monday, they are depressed because they have to get ready to go back to work after the weekend. And so just it's just amazing because again, let me go back to saying we don't commonly hear bullying in the workplace because we normally hear bullying on the playground or with children. And so I just really want to stress if you are in a situation and you're working in a toxic workplace environment, you certainly do want to let someone know if it is your immediate supervisor or director that is doing the bullying, then you want to go to the next person, go to the human resource person or something, because it's very unfair that you have to spend at least a quarter of your day in that type of environment. And make sure if you are a director or the boss, if you will, to make sure your employees feel valued, they feel appreciated, because over it's 78% of employees who have been actually, well, they've been surveyed, say they would prefer to feel valued at their place of work over securing a raise. And that to me says that you really cannot put a price on being and feeling valued. But you also want, again, to affirm yourself, continually to affirm yourself. I remember I had a little booklet that would write down affirmations. And when I could feel the tension getting high on my break, I would go and I would read these affirmations and recite these affirmations and scriptures. That's how I was able to get through working at that major toxic workplace that I shared with you. And I'm not sure if I have additional minutes, but I wanted to certainly stay within that time frame.
No, it's fine. If you had something, I can ask a quick question,
Mhm.
then we can ask others. Now you've given. I like to say that it's funny that when you were sharing, probably everybody on here knew that you were leading up to suicide. And it's not only the. I felt like it was not only the bullying online, but it was also the loneliness
Mhm.
because kids need social interaction as well. So I felt you were leading up to that suicide. I even wrote it down, but just a little bit on, you can just share with us a little bit on the character education or the character training that you do
Mhm.
that helps people, feel more confident about themselves.
Mhm.
And then maybe if you can give us a little bit, if you've done any stats on those who are bullies, what
Yeah.
what are their triggers that cause them to do those types of things to other people?
Okay. If I can just start with those who are bullies, I want to, with children, starting with the children, of course, usually they are most people have low self-esteem or they don't feel good about themselves and they feel if they can bully you or say something negative or hurt you, it will make them feel more powerful and it will make them feel, more important or feel better about themselves. And that's the major contributing factor to people who bullies. They just, and oftentimes, just like you mentioned, Reverend Oliver, is that isolation. And many times isolation is certainly a form of, if you don't have friends and you may see other people that are interacting or socializing with other people and you don't really have friends. And sometimes you don't have friends if you are a bully because people don't want to be around you. Okay. And that's so important, is to, and I let me, and I can just, I was going to end with this, but I do want to say with parents, check to see if your child is the bully. Because a lot of times we give information about, are you being bullied? But you want to also find out if your children is the bully. And some ways to do that are when you're listening to their conversation, you can usually hear if they're gossiping or they saying, oh, it's something that's very common with girls. Oh, she thinks she's cute and I don't like her, and she thinks she dresses really nice and I don't like her, and you're listening to this and the conversation that is being fed into the spirits makes a huge, huge difference. And knowing that I think my child may be bullying. And sometimes I know I've done parenting workshops and I've asked, some of the parents in interaction, whose children are being bullied and who can honestly say after I've given them some uh, basic examples of bullying, whose child is bullied. And many times parents would raise their hand and say, you know what? I believe my child is a bully. And then they would think back and say, well, you know what? I bully kids as well because I didn't feel good about myself. So that communication piece is so important. And of course, that's where we can align the character building and character development as well. We can pull that in. And of course, we know, with integrity, are you honest? Are you someone who says that you will do exactly what you said you will do? Are you responsible? Are you respectful? So, so very important. And I remember the major importance of character education and character development. I remember back in 2000 in Georgia, I recall the mandate for character education in the classroom came because the teachers were reporting the children were so out of control that the governor had to step in and mandate that character education be taught in the schools. Now, when I actually saw that article come out, it bothered me because generally, in my opinion, and over my experience, character education really should begin at home, but oftentimes it does not. And so that's what a lot of the teachers were finding out. But I was really blessed and privileged to be able to sit on the board that first year of determining which character word and the actual character course, what that would look like. And I had an opportunity to go in and teach what was called teaching and reinforcing character education in the classroom. Now, I can honestly say the teachers were not really excited about that because, and it was totally understandable, it was one additional thing that they had to be responsible for. But they knew that they were also responsible for educating these children. So, and I just want to say, of course, to the parents and the grandparents, please, please, certainly be very cognizant of teaching and sharing with your kids character traits. Because when I think of character education, just as a whole, whose character would you like to be developed in that young person? And that young person grows up to be an adult. And so then we also look at character when it comes to, again, honesty, for example. I know that there was a question I think I did in one of my books, and it said, for example, and this is just honesty, if a cashier gives you back too much money, what are you going to do? And this is character, right? So are you going to say, oh, wow, oh, I was so blessed today. I got extra money that, I wasn't expecting. No, you're going to actually give that back to them and tell them that you gave me too much change. I want to give that back to you. And that happened to me before. And and I told her, I said, I don't want your drawer to come up short. Okay. And she was like, oh, thank you so much. And so just basically character is just doing the right thing, even when no one is looking or listening. It's just being honest. And of course, we know that people may not be looking, right? But we know that God is always looking. He sees everything. So we can't hide anything from him. And so, again, that character education is so, so very essential, knowing those character traits practicing those character traits. And again, as children, and then, but you grow up to be an adult. And so you want to certainly be able to share and demonstrate those character traits in front of your children. That is how they learn.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. It's so great. I'm going to open up the floor, but I always have a theme in my ministry or where I teach and I deal with young people as well. Anyone, I just say, who are you when nobody's looking?
Mm-hmm.
Determines your character. So the floor is open. Our dear sister has said some really great things. I know we have a lot of people on that would like to make some comments or ask some questions. So the floor is open.
Yeah, hi, Reverend Oliver. Maybe I can begin. Hi, Donna. Thank you for your presentation. Made a lot of very good points. I think the element of character building, you're right, it should happen at home, but we know 95% of families are dysfunctional. So it's not happening at home. And Dr. Durst has done some very interesting research, and I'll put this in the chat, how families, schools, and communities raise good children. And it needs to be all different levels, because one of the challenges we've seen in education over the last several decades is most of the young people going into education are young girls who are not married or are not in a relationship. So they have no idea how to parent and no idea how to mentor these young children. So there's a huge dropout in schools because of that, because they just don't know what to do. They don't know how to manage the school. And from my experience of teaching a character-based abstinence program in Jersey City and Paterson, New Jersey, from 5th grade to 12th grade, it's a challenge to manage the classroom. You spend 90% of your time until you figure out how to do it. And the way that I figured that out was getting the worst behaved girl or guy in the classroom and giving them a lot of love and attention and having them be the coordinate the classroom, and then they can actually can control the classroom completely. So that's one way of doing it. And I did the same at William Patterson University. I empowered the students there to teach middle school kids how to build their character. So I think there's a lot that's being done. Peter Yarrow has a program called Operation Respect, a curriculum called Don't Laugh at Me that's available. I'll put that in the chat also. And that's both a conflict resolution, anti-bullying, and character development program. And finally, I'll mention, and then I'll have a question for you, that the stats on suicide, there's over the last several years since COVID, we have 100,000 suicides, deaths of despair in the US. Interestingly enough, in New Zealand, one of the most beautiful countries in the world, has one of the highest teen suicide rates. And the other country that is incredibly wealthy now is Korea. The 10th wealthiest GDP in the world has one of the highest suicide rates. Uh, so what work have you found of the correlation between wealth and suicide rates? And what do you think of the notion that most bullies have narcissistic tendencies? So those are my questions to you.
Thank you, Alan.
Okay, so with narcissistic tendencies, we'll talk about that first. Of course, it's usually that's a controlling spirit. Part of that is a spirit of control. And with that comes also is, of course, the power. It's a power, again, which is what I mentioned with bullying. Bullies feel that they are empowered and they can have power over others. As far as the wealth gap that has to do with the suicide rates, it's just feeling, I found in a lot of the studies, it's just feeling, again, feeling isolated and feeling that there is nobody cares. And of course, that kind of parallels with the isolation, that no one cares, or that you're the only one is affected as well, which is also it's isolation as well with them.
Yeah,
And
thank you. There's also some excellent programs I've seen from Canada where they have peer support programs now where they try and mentor college kids, try and mentor high school kids, try and mentor the younger children.
yes.
And one of the elements of that peer mediation is that they identify what's called high risk children. And
Mhm.
those high risk children are usually the ones that are very quiet and very shy, and also some of the ones who are the smartest, because the average child, and especially the lower socioeconomically and lower performing children, don't like anybody who's smart. They hate that, so that they tend, okay, I'm going to attack anybody who's smart. So, yeah, thank you for your
I
comments.
have a quick question for both of you before you go off, Alan, and then I want to open up the floor, see if Dr. Madeline, whoever wants to say something. Can that be associated with when you have these upper trajectory economic GDP countries coming into existence? Is there a sense of competition that associates with kids trying to compete to get somewhere, maybe from their parents or from the society, that they feel lack of, or a competitive spirit that they can't, you know, meet? They feel they can meet those expectations.
Donna,
Yes,
do you want to start?
yes, I believe so. And I've worked with several different cultures, and what I have found is some of what happens is could be parents. Parents are really very extremely strict on their children. There was one school that I taught my program at, and I noticed that a lot of the children, well, a lot of the parents, they all they wanted them to do is study, study, study. I remember in the after school program. And so um, I actually had the program set up where the children, yes, we would offer homework help and help them with their studies. However, they also needed an outlet. They needed to be able to go to recess and play for a moment. For children to be in school, so many hours, and with no other outlet. And a lot of the schools no longer have recess. And so they don't have an opportunity all the time to just get and burn off any kind of steam. And so that's where some of that bullying comes from as well. But it is so important that we make sure that the children are as well rounded as possible. And because I remember one parent saying to me, I don't care if my child plays, they don't need to play unless all of their work is done first. And so I told him I understood exactly what he was saying, but would it be okay for his child to at least, play 10 or 15 minutes? And he was like, well, that will be fine, but he has to have all his homework done, before he leaves the school, before I come and pick him up. And I understand that. And so, yes, some of that is, I have found some of it can be imposed by parents who are very competitive, and they have that competitive spirit. And they want, of course, and I believe all parents, want the best for their children. I believe that. But we also have to, ensure that we know that they're still children. They're still children.
True.
And
Yeah,
yes.
that's true. Yeah, from my research, yeah, there's an incredible amount of pressure in the schools, especially in the colleges. One young student, a junior at Columbia, committed suicide because she got a C instead of an A, Chinese girl. Um, Same thing in Korea. They're dealing with the emperor syndrome there, and the emperor syndrome there, where they have uh, only one child in the classroom. So they have to be successful, and if they're not, then there's a lot of problems. So um, it's pushed by the parents and even by the parents here, especially the South Asian parents from India and other countries, places like that. And that is across the board now.
Thank you, Alan.
Um,
Okay, we have a couple more questions answered. Before you come on, Dr. Madam Angelica, go ahead. I think your hand was up.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I was wondering about girls also being bullies. Are there statistics? It sounds like it's mostly boys or men bullying, but is there any other information on women and girls?
Absolutely. Girls, the stat that I researched, the mainly with girls is the insulting and talking about and spreading the gossiping, telling some of the girls, why do you have that on? Or you're not pretty, or, you know, why do you wear your hair like that? And those kinds of things. So the majority of the girls, but yes, girls do deal with bullying. It just showed that boys, their stats are a little higher when it comes to physical bullying. But absolutely, girls are as well.
All
Thanks.
right, thank you. All right, Dr. Madeline. Thank you, Angelica. Thank you.
Yes.
Question.
Greetings, Donna. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us. When I think about bullying, I listened to your story about being bullied, and you mentioned asking the parent if their child was a bully. And I know for me, being in grade school, I bullied the bullies. And my defense was to, I didn't like the fact that people would pick on people that didn't have the same clothes or didn't have lunch money and those type of things. So I didn't think of it as bullying at that time. I thought of it as protecting those that didn't have the courage to protect themselves. But in that process, as you were explaining, maybe I was a bully, but I was bullying the bullies for the greater good, to take care of those that weren't able to take care of themselves. And when you talk about bullying in the workplace, we don't always think about adults bullying, but I think in the workplace, they figure out a more constructive way of bullying with microaggression, saying things and saying things that lead to other things. So again, with the information that you shared, it gave me a greater insight. And I have had those conversations. Well, naturally, I had the conversation with my children earlier on, and now they're all adults. But to have those conversations with my grandchildren, to ask them, are they being bullied? And now I'm going to ask them, are they bullying? I only have like 3 more left in school. But to know um, that these things are, we know that they're from the spiritual realm, and that spirit will attach themselves on to people that appear meeker or people that appear withdrawn. And those behaviors, once you start being picked on, it kind of escalate and has a domino effect, and it leads to isolation. Um, so in your in your when you talk about the girls, you said it's usually with the name calling and the gossiping, and things like that. But when you're in a professional workplace, it's still the gossiping, and they will pick on someone that has already isolated themselves, that didn't want to be of the a part of the clique or a part of the group or whatever. So what would you say to a professional person that's in that hostile environment, and know that they're being singled out? What uh, tidbit would you give them as far as moving forward and not feeling as though they have to be isolated.
Mm-hmm. It is so important. Thank you for that, and your comments. What I would say to them is, first of all, they have to seek out help. So if it is their supervisor or their director, if they are the ones that is bullying them, then they have to go to someone else. Human resources generally is where you would go. But you are absolutely right. Oftentimes, when the employees are isolated and they're just kind of to themselves and have their head down and just working, doing their work, yes, they can be, with the gossip, and then with, you were supposed to be back 2 minutes ago from your break. What's your problem? And those kinds of things. But I stress so much to please seek out help. Even if there's another employee that, you are close to and you have that relationship with, talk to them about it as well. And even if you want to have them go to report it, because it has to be reported. It has to be reported. When I hear the stats are just from those who report it, but there's so many more that do not report. And especially in a workplace environment, for the simple fact that you could lose your job. And so, I would just really, really pray about this. And I would even ask God, who should I go to? If you have to put something in writing, write a letter. And it's better always to go to someone than to start, because a lot of times people will start rumors, right? And without really realizing it. But just really, I would just pray about the situation first and then go and say, look, I have to talk to somebody about it. I remember when I was working as an insurance agent when I first moved to Georgia, and I could recall it was only 3 employees there, and I remember that I was being sexually harassed by the male there. And with him, and it was just myself, him, and his wife. And so anytime she would say, well, I'm going to go out to lunch or I need to run an errand, I'm thinking to myself, please don't, because there was no one I could tell what was going on. And that's also toxic workplace. And
Yes.
oftentimes we don't hear about that as much. And in fact, I did not even recall that until I was writing my last book and I was talking about the workplace. And it just dawned, it's like God just brought that back to me because I had just buried it. So, I just didn't even think about it anymore. But I said, well, wow, God, that's bullying. Makes for a toxic workplace environment. And so finally, I just had to quit and walk away because I couldn't tell her. I didn't feel I could tell her. I mean, that's her husband. And but I do want to say one more comment. What you said about you bullied the bullies. I want to talk about that just for a second because stats say that a lot of children will be bullied less if those who stood by would actually stand up and say something. So I wouldn't really call that bullying. You were someone who stood by and you used your heart because it was heartfelt to see someone else being bullied or taken advantage of. So I really would not call you a bully for doing that.
Thank you.
Yes, you were not a bully for doing that.
Thank you.
But
Thank
yeah.
you. Thank you. I have
And even to this day, and I'm out of the workplace, I've retired and all of that, but it bothers me to see people mistreated, mishandled by these people who think they have some type of power and authority over them. So in my line of work, I've always been an advocate. I worked in the prison system, I was an advocate. I worked public health, I was an advocate, because I understand that it takes all kind of people to make the world go round, and you have some that are going to be aggressive, some going to be assertive, and some going to be withdrawn. And I think for those that are withdrawn, it's like you said, something happened somewhere along the way to put them in that position where they might feel like they don't have a voice. And sometimes those with power will take advantage of that. And I just think it's so unfair. So until this day, I'm still an advocate for those that have that spirit, that meek spirit, and people take advantage of that.
Yeah.
So yeah,
That
thank
is,
you.
Thank you.
sounds like it's
Thank you.
part of your purpose. So
Yes,
praise God
ma'am.
that there are people like you, because there are so many people, yes, that are being taken advantage of unfairly. So thank
Yeah,
you for what you do.
Yes,
thank you
ma'am.
so
God
much.
bless.
I'd like
Thank
to
you.
thank you, Madeline. Dr. I'm gonna leave it alone, but I think I see her do that already. I can attest to it. Uh, yeah, so, but we're coming to a close. So I have two questions I want you the last few words. One, EJ, who you don't see, but he's the one who's a tech guy. He keeps putting on workplace violence. So how does, many times that can escalate into violence. And secondly, if you like to address, I love that first stat that you gave earlier on when you said that just by virtue of being socially ignored by your peers is more impactful than and a slap in the face and detrimental than those who are being punched, slapped, and etc. So those 2 points I like if you could close out with that for us.
Well, going back to words and the use of words and how words can hurt and words can heal. And with just having a negative attitude and the things that you say that are negative to others, it hurts more sometimes than the physical if you're in a fight. And I recall oftentimes with children, I remember I was in I was doing a parent workshop, and we were talking about discipline, how parents discipline their children. And I will never forget that this one dad said, well, I would rather have, or my son said, I would rather you just go ahead and spank me, and then I can get it over with and I can go on, instead of having mom just, keep fussing at me and telling me that I shouldn't have done that and blah, 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 and going on and on and on. So again, words. And I continue to say that words can help and words can hurt. So we have to be very careful about how we speak, because we are either, you're either encouraging or you're discouraging with your words and what you say to others. And what, I'm sorry, what was your other?
The other one was bullying escalating to workplace violence.
Oh, yes, 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 yes. Yes, gosh, I just, I think of, I just on the news yesterday, I saw a situation where it was in one of the fast food, was it, well, two, actually. One was in one of the fast food places, and the the meal was not hot enough. And so there was an argument at this place of work, and then the customer just jumps over the counter and start beating up the worker. Okay. And then you have the situation where there may or may not have been an argument, or it may have been someone who felt unheard and they had tried to make their point. And so they were unable to make their point and they felt unheard. So just like children reach out for attention, well, adults do the same thing. There was a young man that decided to go back to his place of work and shoot his manager. And he basically said that his manager ignored him and just it was just it's just unbelievable. But again, we talked about that feeling of isolation, the feeling of not being valued, and of course, not being appreciated or heard. And those are some of the commonalities that turn into workplace violence. And it's really sad. And so, we have to be very conscious of how we're interacting with people. We have to be very conscious of being more encouraging than discouraging, because we don't know where everyone is. And we're just not sure where they are, where their spirits are. We don't know. And so the best thing I would suggest is to be as encouraging to others as possible.
Thank you. We're coming to a close. I think one of the most powerful statements that you've made today, and I know that our parents and friends were trying to encourage us back in the day when they said, sticks and stones will break my bones, but words will never harm me. And as you said, it's not true. Words have power. That's why even the power of the word of God is what transforms you, right? So the power of Satan and the power of negative words also can play a detrimental role in your life. So I don't know where that, I think they were just trying to encourage us, right? To make it feel like it's like water off a duck's back, but it doesn't. It still sticks with you, even if you ignore it and move on. But for some reason, those words follow you in your mind. Sometimes there's a repetition in your mind that you can't get rid of, right? So that's how powerful it is. Thank you so much for sharing that and sharing your story. Did you want to say something in regards to that?
My pleasure. I was just thinking again, with the words, we have to be very, very conscious of what we're saying, what we say to others, and what we say to ourselves is so important as well. But I agree with you. Yeah, they were trying to say, well, they're just, saying negative things about you. Don't worry about that, as long as they're not hitting you or something like that. But word too. And there are many adults that right to this day, they still have things that were said to them even as a child that they still play back in their minds that was not so positive.
Right, exactly. So I want to thank everyone. Thank Alan. He has to leave. Thank you so much for your comments. Everybody, thank you. See everybody on. Always thank you, Dr. Madeline, for your words and your encouragement and help. And Angelica, thank you so much for suggesting this wonderful speaker. Donna Rowley, thank you so much for bringing certain things in our consciousness. Sometimes we don't remember, and you brought it back to our consciousness so that we can look for it. So we're having conference. Dr. Alexander want to make sure that Dr. Donna Rowley does participate in our upcoming conference as well. So thank you so much, everyone. Those who didn't speak, we look forward to some of your comments in our next speaker next week. And we look forward if you feel compelled and you say, look, we'd like to share something else, you're always welcome to come back.
Well, thank you so much again for the opportunity. And I just always pray that when I speak, that God will allow me to add some type of value. And I hope that's what I did.
You did. Yeah, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Okay, everyone, God bless you. We will see you next week. Thanks, everyone.
God bless. Take care.
I didn't hear from James Parker. Oh, my goodness. Wow. I knew somebody was missing.
Yeah, I spoke to him earlier,
Yeah.
and he didn't say whether he was going to be available or not because I'm in his territory now on the East Coast.
Oh, I
But
see.
he might be a little busy. He has some other things on his agenda.
Oh, I see. Okay, but I see
Yep.
his name. But he's always
Yes.
there. But
Yes.
all right. Okay.
All
Thank
right.
you, everyone.
God bless everyone.
Okay.
God bless. Thank you so
Ambassador
much.
for Peace,
Being.
Donna Page Riley.
Hi,
Thank
Sabine.
you.
Good to
Oh,
see
by
you.
the way, she's ambassador of peace. I meant to say it. Sometimes I get forget. Thank you for being also ambassador of peace, Donna Riley. Okay.
Yes,
Great.
proud of you. Very precious. Thank
Yeah, great.
Thank you so much. To God be the glory. Thank you.
Please pray
Mhm.
for me. I'm going at 6. I'm invited to speak as part of suicide prevention program.
Okay.
I will provide the video afterward. I don't know whether today it will be ready, but as soon as possible.
Wonderful. I'm sure you'll make a very, very big impact. Thank you for what you do, Mr. Sabine.
With the help of GPS, God provides surely. Otherwise, by
Absolutely.
myself, no.
Absolutely.
Okay. God bless everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
God
Thanks
Have a
bless
great
you. Be
evening.
safe, everyone.
Love the GPS.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.